Hello. So we are going to be looking at ecosystems notes. This series of notes is going to be kind of divvied up into a couple different videos, and this is the first one. So in this unit, we already looked at land management and national parks, Bureau of Land Management, different entities that manage the land. But now we're going to be looking specifically at that land that we are managing. So, how do we decide which ecosystems to save? How are they different? And why do we need ecosystems? So, when we're looking at an ecosystem, I know there's a bunch of notes here. The stuff that's in bold are really the kind of need to know things. So, an ecosystem is an area of an environment and the living things and how they interact together. So, for an example, the like carbon dioxide and water cycle, all of those things like plants absorb CO2 and water, convert it into glucose and oxygen, and then we use those byproducts in order to do cell respiration. And then the stuff that we give off plants need, and that whole cycle of stuff that we talked in regular bio, that is part of the ecosystem. Um, so when we are looking at ecosystems, we have to understand that ecosystems need animals because animals are the consumers of plant biomass and they are able to release CO2 and water that plants need. So if there are no animal forms, we can't really have plants in an area. And the same thing in vice versa. If there are no plants, we can't really have any animals that live in an area. So all living species are also part of their own trophic level. So that word troph means to eat. So trophic level is an eating level. And we've seen that quite a bit in regular bio in pyramids. So at the bottom, we have the producers. Those are anything that you would find in the produce section. And then up above, we have all of our consumers. So primary, secondary, tertiary. And then things like detritivores are the decomposers and they eat all the dead stuff. They occur at every level of that trophic level pyramid. The reason why plants are always going to be at the bottom is because they're the only species that's actually capable of turning water into other stuff. That is a very, very energy intensive process, and plants are able to do that, which is actually kind of cool, kind of badass. So, looking at these different ecosystems, it's kind of cool and kind of crazy. If we look at this picture down here, it is really, really cool to think about that as we increase in dryness, so we have increase of dryness here and increase of temperature, we have certain really, really predictable things that happen in different regions. So if we think about a tropical region, so that part of the world, that little band, like right around the equator, if we have wet and hot, so at the bottom that's hot, then we get a tropical forest. If we have hot and semi-arid, so semi-arid means semi-dry, then we get a grassland. And if we get really hot, really dry, then we get a desert. Okay, at the next one, a temperate region, so that's kind of around where we live. If we have really wet and moderately hot, we're going to get a temperate forest. But in our region, so like in our band, if we have areas that are really dry, even the same temperature, we get a desert. Okay. So kind of cool to think about those different things as well. And we also have to think about this in terms of biodiversity. So if we look at a desert, there is a lot less plant life. Because there's less plant life, it can't support other life systems as much. And this is because of this one right here, the 10% rule. So climates that are cold or dry limit the ability of plants to exist. And the limiting of ability of plants to exist limits everything else as we go up those trophic levels. And this is because of that 10% rule. So the abundance of plants has to be greater than the abundance of organisms that eat the plants. That always has to be true. And this is because in a trophic pyramid, like if this was a trophic pyramid, the level at the bottom, only 10% of that biomass is available at the next group up in order to actually eat and consume. Okay. So before you guys move on to your little activity that you are going to do, I want you to turn and talk to each other about these two questions. So, how do living things such as plants, animals, decomposers, all of these things, how do they interact with the non-living parts of their environment? So try to include those terms down there. So in a little group get together, either draw a picture or anything like that to explain. And then I want you guys to share with the class, share a couple groups what they said. And then the next one, why do environments that are sunnier, warm, and wet have bigger number of species than environments that are dark, cold, and dry? Okay, so try to explain those two things based off of the little tiny bit of notes that I just did.